Colorado River and through on them.
Or just a
So many of you are familiar with GCMRC. The Arizona Water Science Center is actually a totally different center. We actually don't get to work with GCMRC nearly as much as I would like. But our mission as the Arizona Water Science Center is to collect and interpret high quality, impartial scientific information to provide resource managers and the public with the knowledge required to understand and manage the critical water resources of Arizona and the Southwest. So while GCMRC is more site specific within Grand Canyon, the Arizona Water Science Center is statewide. But we do have projects within Grand Canyon and along the Colorado River. The three kind of main project types that we have along the Colorado River and through Grand Canyon include stream gauging, so how much water is flowing at different locations. A lot of this is available real time to the public online. We also have different water quality projects, so collecting samples to understand trends in water chemistry. And some of this water data is available real time, while some is processed in a lab and available after review. And we also have sediment load monitoring, so sampling sediment loads and bed material based on stream flow to understand transport trends. So stream gauges monitor real-time trends in water level. Does anybody know where this stream gauge is?
Phantom?
Hearing Phantom and Lee's Ferry, there's a clue right here. So this is the Lee's Ferry stream gauge because the cableway is just upstream of the gauge. And so this stream gauge, yeah, Lee's Ferry. So a stream gauge in general is a structure installed beside a stream or river that measures and records the water level. You may also hear terms like beach height or stage. This all just means the same thing, so how high the water is. And stream gauges can then be used to compute stream flow, also called discharge. And it's computed from measured water levels using a site-specific relationship called a stage discharge rating curve. So basically the gauge is measuring the change in water level and using a specific equation to then compute stream flow. And this gauge at Lee's Ferry utilizes this kind of a float piece of equipment where there's kind of basically a little float down here on a measuring tape, and as the water moves up or down, there's a computer up in here that measures the change. There's also a radar that extends off the top here, and that's used as a backup sensor, since this is one of the most important stream gauges in the nation. Some of our other gauges through the canyon use a bubbler system, which is amazing to me because it's basically just this long straw that extends into the water, and it uses air pressure to determine changes in water level. Mm-hmm. Changes to stream flow can occur due to a variety of different reasons. We know here on the Colorado River through Grand Canyon, we have a dam that controls the amount of water coming through, while in other more natural systems, they can be affected by things like snow melt, drought, monsoons, water taken out for municipal or agricultural uses. And so most of the time here on the Colorado River, we see pretty standardized flows based on our dam releases. Every once in a while, we get something like this, which is what? A high flow experiment. This is the last one in 2023. But you wouldn't see something like this typically, only during our high flow experiments would we kind of go outside of this daily cyclic trend. But on tributary sites, we see a lot more volatile flows. So this is Havasu above the mouth during our big monsoon event in 2024. where we can see base flows chugging along around 70 CFS. And then due to some localized precipitation events, we had some big, steep flows. This was actually the year we had a fatality at this site. And we actually also had a river trip on the water that we're able to get right to the site and get some measurements and some data from the gauge. And also just kind of a show of hands, who utilizes this gauge data? Who looks at this? Okay, a lot of people. Awesome. I love to see that. I think this is such an underutilized tool, you know, especially when you're on the river. My partner works on the river, and especially when flows are going to be really low or kind of outside normal, she'll text me, say, hey, can you give me the highs and lows at Lee's Ferry, or give me the highs and lows at the Phantom Ranch gauge or at Diamond. And I'll send her those flows because, as we know, things are gonna kind of get bony here this year, and being informed, I think, is going to be really important. So if you have an inReach and you can kind of reach out to, you know, if it's a manager at your commercial agency or a friend or a partner, to just say, hey, what are the flows looking like? So you can stay informed while you're on the river. We all know we had the Dragon Bravo fire this past summer. I was actually out on a GCY trip right as the fire took off, which was pretty exciting. Those of us that live in Flagstaff know that fire can lead to some pretty intense flooding, as we saw after the museum fire, where there's a viral video of a Prius floating down the street during some flooding after that fire. So we all know, you know, the possibility of flash flooding coming off of the North Rim is a concern, certainly, especially for camping. So at the Arizona Water Science Center, in response to the Dragon Bravo fire, we installed 3 new stream gauges and 3 precipitation gauges. The 3 stream gauges are right at the mouth of Bright Angel Creek, then below Ribbon Falls, and below Cottonwood Campground. And then the precip gauges are up on the rim. So how do we actually measure stream flow? Because the gauge is measuring how high the water is, but we still need to calibrate these gauges because the equation that they're used is based on the geometry of the channel. And we know, especially in these sedimented river systems, channels can erode and have sediment deposited, changing that channel geometry. So to either calibrate a stream gauge or measure the flow at an ungauged system, the main thing we're looking for is area times velocity. So we're looking for a transect across the channel, gathering depth and velocity data. And we can do that sometimes by weighting, using a cableway. If we're looking at really small systems like springs, we actually use a volumetric method. But the main way that we collect stream flow data on the main stem of the Colorado River is using something called an ADCP, Acoustic Doppler Current Profiler. And this piece of equipment provides really amazing profile data of depth and stream velocity. And it uses something kind of similar to sonar, where it sends out beams into the water. The beams ping off either the bottom of the channel or particles in the water. And that's what gives you this really detailed profile here. So if you see us driving back and forth with this little boogie board guy, that's what that is. At Lee's Ferry, we actually use the cableway and have the ADCP off of the cableway. So if you're ever up there and you see someone going back and forth with this little boogie board guy, they're collecting a discharge measurement to help calibrate the gauge. Moving on to our second general project type, we have water quality data. And so water quality trends inform natural and anthropogenic influences. And water chemistry can change due to a variety of different reasons, whether it's point source, any kind of mining, which could also be an indicator of just natural geology in an area, whether there's some kind of like seepage from a landfill or waste management, algal blooms, sedimentation, bacteria, runoff of pesticides and nutrients from agriculture. Yeah, water chemistry can change for a variety of different reasons. The water quality data that we collect kind of comes in two different forms. The first is real-time data. So we have calibrated water quality meters that we can bring out to a site, stick it in the water, and get real-time information on pH, dissolved oxygen, water temperature, specific conductance, and turbidity. We also have these water quality meters that are deployed continuously at sites throughout the canyon. Raise of hands, who has seen this? Okay, less people. So this is a water quality buoy that is deployed at Lee's Ferry. It's just underneath the cableway downstream. It was deployed 2 years ago in 2024, and it collects these big five water quality parameters. And we used to have the meter deployed at the gauge, but due to the water levels kind of continuously getting lower, it just wasn't representative of the channel. So we have this deployed now in the middle of the channel, and it's providing much better and more representative data. And as Emily Omana was telling us, having this real-time data can be really important, especially as we are starting to monitor and think about the possibility of invasive species like the smallmouth bass coming through the dam. And so smallmouth bass can establish and reproduce temperatures greater than 16 Celsius. And so having that real-time water temperature data can help us identify if we're kind of in that critical danger zone of where conditions could be right for them to establish. The second kind of water quality data we collect needs to be sent to a lab for analysis. So we can't just stick a meter in the water and get real-time results. And a lot of our sampling we send to the USGS National Water Quality Lab, which is a really amazing tool because all these different USGS agencies and water science centers are sending their data here. It's getting processed the same way with the same equipment, so it makes our data very comparable and transferable across the nation. And they can sample for hundreds of different parameters, but generally what we're looking for is things like nutrients, trace metals, isotopes, pesticides, uranium, PFAS, medications, bacteria, sediment, and so many more. So how do we collect these water quality samples? I am responsible for monitoring the water quality project at Lee's Ferry, which is part of the National Water Quality Network sampling. So there's sites across the nation, and we're collecting these samples in the same exact way. So it gives a really good picture of where water quality trends are at different sites across the US. And I'm up there at least every month, sometimes twice a month, collecting these samples. And we have a boat mounted with a crane and this little torpedo looking thing on the front. And we have 5 stations across the river where we lower the sampler through the water column, and we're collecting a representative sample horizontally and vertically through the river. And then I take our sample into our pop-up mobile lab, which people think is like a fun camper thing, but it's just lab benches and like a titration stand and sampling equipment. So I'm able to filter bottle and acidify our samples in here. And then I drive them back to town, send them to the lab. Some other water quality projects we have through the canyon include groundwater sampling on the North Rim and spring sampling, as well as tributary sampling. And then our third general project we have through the canyon is sediment load monitoring, and sediment controls the physical habitat of river ecosystems. And understanding sediment transport dynamics is critical to determining conditions when sediment is deposited or eroded. And sediment sampling kind of combines the methods of stream gauging and water quality sampling, where some gauges actually have a little R2D2 looking thing. And when the gauge hits a certain stream gauge, then it will use this kind of long straw thing and suck a sample up, and it takes a sample every hour through a high flow event. And so we'll have these samples that get sent to a lab and analyzed. At sites that are not gauged, we use that same kind of methodology of a transect and then using a sampler to lower through the water column at 5 different stations. That's all. If anyone has any questions. Right here.
Really remote stream gauging is big. We're saying that we have the cross sections of the state profile has to be like that. It is a really remote stream gauge. Question is the chalk that what's the sediment in the region? How much do I really trust these gauges?
Great question. Can you repeat it? Yeah. So the question is, some of these gauges are really remote, and there is a lot of erosion or sediment deposition that can happen, change that state discharge relationship curve. And so how reliable is this data? So any stream gauge that we have is publicly available, and there will be on the graph, if you're looking at, it'll show data that's approved and data that's provisional. It'll be very clear. Provisional data, it might need to be calibrated. There might have been a big fill condition that happened and changed the channel. But most gauges are visited every other month. Gauges in the canyon are quarterly. And so that data, the tributary data especially, can be pretty volatile. So if there's a huge event that comes in, you can almost bet that right after that event, the gauge needs to be calibrated or something broke. It's probably not going to be spot on right after a big event where there's likely been some kind of fill or scour occurring. But we are out there every month, every other month or quarterly, calibrating these gauges. And if there's obviously something wrong, we get out there as soon as we can to fix them, because we know people rely on these gauges, Diamond Creek, to tell if you can get in and get your folks or not, if there's any kind of flash flooding happening. So yeah, we're out there, we're hiking in all kinds of equipment, and yeah, trying to get the work done with the very limited staff that we still have. Yeah, the back. What was that? Yes. Sorry, with the direction.
How is the sonar measuring the velocity of the stream, even though the sound is going, so the velocity is perpendicular to the sound.
Right. Yeah. So it's the particles that are moving through, it's pinging those particles. And so it's detecting how fast those particles are moving underneath. And so if you have either really, really clear water, or when we get those really, really chocolate milk flows, those pieces of equipment have a hard time because there's either too much noise with the chocolate milk particles, or there's not enough particles to ping off of when you have the super, super clear water.
It's like catching particles floating by and using that.
Yes, yes, yeah. So it's using the velocity of the particles. It's not monitoring each particle. It's like, oh, here's one, here's one, here's one. And so, yeah, pinging off of each individual particle. One more, maybe? Oh, yes. Yeah, good question. So do the major, Lee's Ferry, Phantom Ranch, Diamond gauges follow the quarterly schedule. So Lee's Ferry is every other month. I used to manage that gauge. That's now moved on to somebody else. And yeah, we take that gauge really, really seriously. That is one of the most important gauges in the country. We make sure that gauge is spot on. We make sure it's accurate. We know that's really important data for all of you, for water managers. So that's every other month. And Phantom is quarterly. And I believe Diamond is also quarterly.
Thank you very much.
Okay, guys, I think